Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have professionals from Ukraine, Dr. Larysa Didkovska, who is a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, and therapist, and supervisor at the Ukrainian Union of Psychotherapists. Currently, she is focusing on psychotherapeutic support for refugees, displaced persons, and combatants and their families. She is also a training supervisor of psychologists and psychotherapists. We have Ms. Kristina Haustak, who is a clinical psychologist working at the Center of Rehabilitation for Children. Since the beginning of the war, she is also volunteering as a translator for international online meetings. And we have Dr. Serhiy Tsyapets, who is a professor at the Palacký University in Olomouc, Czech Republic. Previously taught psychotherapy at the Uzhhorod National University in Uzhgorod, Ukraine. For 15 years, he worked with families using psychophysiological methodologies in dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. He also worked with medical students in Uzhhorod during the Russian invasion of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions of Ukraine in 2014, and currently works with the Ukrainian refugees in the Czech Republic. Over to you, Dr. Didkovska.
Thank you so much, my dears. Now we have two main words. Slava Ukraini, glory to the Ukraine. And we have the very well-famous answer, glory to our heroes. Why? Why it is such important today? Why it is such important right now? Because we have in our country absolutely terrible war. Absolutely abnormal, abmoral war, and our professional helps, our professional attitudes to this situation, it is only main and very, very important efforts to cope with this war for the whole our people. Now I will try to explain some data, and it is resources of adaptation to life during the war. It is some very, very official data which can demonstrate, which can show us the situation with these effects on the mental state of Ukrainians. First of all, you can change this difference. It is March 2021. Emotional state assessment. 1,200 respondents, population of Ukraine aged 18 and older, in all its regions, except for temporary occupied territories, you know it. And we can see it is from 16 point in March 21 to 27 point in April 22. This highest level, number 5, very tense emotional state. And the lowest level, only 8 point, very calm emotional state. From 10.7 till 3.5 in 1 year. Why? You know the answer. Because of this terrible situation, because of this terrible influence of aggression of Russia on our people. The next data, index of psychological or emotional exhaustion. High level, 71%. Medium level, 27%. And only 2 level, it is only 2%, it's low level. It is data of April 2022. The same social center, which is very famous because of this real true data. The next, what is this emotional experience and this wild spectrum of our reactions. First of all, stress. The next one, survivor's guilt, anxiety and fear, for sure, of course, anger and aggression, apathy, fatigue, depressive feelings, and grief and loss. And of course, one is a very destructive feeling, it is a feeling of shame. The next one, it is what is the main influence of the war to our people and to the where, if can be, it will be the same influence. War polarizes and leaves no safe place in the middle where it was possible to be. There are phases, the force of good and the force of evil, us or them. Because of that, integration, it is the main resource for Ukrainians to adapt to life during the war. First of all, what we can do with this polarity, what we can do with this polarization. Professional identity of psychologists and psychotherapists or conceptual differences. Tolerance for the otherness of other or heightened perception of differences. Common goal of our professional community or ideological differences, and integration with the world or isolation from the world. The next one, what we can do with this reaction, because we know that it is the main result of the war. Prevention of acute stress disorders and post-traumatic stress disorders, PTSD. Providing emotional support, what we can do with it, of course. Informing about the mechanism of stress impact on the body and measures to overcome this impact. Informing about available social services in case of symptoms or mental disorders. Psychotherapy centers, it is the places where our Ukrainian clients can take this help. Counseling centers on the basis of higher education institutions that provide crisis psychological assistance. Chatbots for finding specialists in crisis psychological assistance or chats for communication with psychologists and psychotherapists to receive psychological help online. And now the map. Ukrainian psychologists and psychotherapists who are currently living abroad provide psychological assistance to Ukrainians who have been forced to leave the country due to the war. And you can see these terrible numbers, this terrible quantity. More than 5 million refugees fleeing Ukraine, 7.1 million internally displaced persons, and more than half million people directly affected by the war. It is 6th of April, 22. And the last one, because we have our deadline and the limit of time. Psychological assistance for psychologists and psychotherapists who provide crisis psychological assistance to the population. What we are doing all this time, all these 2 months, regular online supervision and intervision group for psychologists and psychotherapists who provide crisis psychological assistance to the population, adults and children in combat zones, internally displaced persons, families who are forced to leave, etc. Online lectures and training seminars, basic principles of crisis psychological care, basic techniques of working with traumatic experience. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Didkovska. It's an excellent presentation. I will share it with all the people. The refugees are at the Mexican border because I'm dealing with that also. As you know, we will have questions. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions and ask me, but your slides are absolutely excellent. Thank you very, very much. Our next presenter will Dr. Tsyapets. Could you be so kind as start your presentation?
I'm sorry, I was not thinking of preparing my presentation. Maybe I will deal with some experience of what is going on here in Czech Republic with Ukrainian refugees. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. For these 2 months, we are accepting rather big amount of refugees in our own small city. It's a regional city of Olomouc with the population of approximately 100,000 people. And as officials in Czech Republic say, they were prepared for approximately 20,000 people for exception in crisis times, and Czech Republic accepted approximately 3,000, so 15 times more. And public system of social care and medical help is really unable to accept such a big amount of refugees. So that's why the state of help to Ukrainian refugees is functioning in crisis mode. And Czech society is trying to accept as much people as it can. And the current problems which are evolving is really set of problems. First, most narrow point is amount of available free spaces for relocation and for putting those refugees for living. So some flats are really free spaces in flats is ending, and people are starting to be settled in some kind of recreational facilities or even at gyms. So something which is going on in Ukraine is starting to be going on in Czech Republic. The system of psychological care is for a long period of time is delaying care even for Czech people, and the common time for attending psychiatrists for children who are in some kind of not very big crisis is 3 or 4 months, and for children who are in acute crisis is 3 to 4 weeks. So, for example, if child is with suicidal tendencies, in order to get to children's psychiatrist, it needs to wait for 2 weeks to get to this psychiatrist. If we speak about psychologists, it's a bit better. It's maybe several weeks for chronic cases and maybe 2 weeks or 1 week for some kind of psychological care. But when we come to Ukrainian refugees, the time is really crucial because there is rather not a very big amount of translators from Ukrainian language to Czech language. And those people who need offline contact, they are really in a very big problem for conducting face-to-face psychological consultations. So the idea which is going on here in Czech Republic is organizing of groups of refugees who are possible to organize on the base of some public spaces or some kind of bigger, I don't know how to say it, bigger halls or maybe some kind of groups with Ukrainian psychologists or with Czech psychologists with translator in order to provide us some kind of crisis care. And we are working with EMDR variant of assist protocol for prophylaxis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And after that, a group of psychologists or psychologists provide individual consultations for those refugees who need it. So in this way, at least here in Olomouc, we organized some kind of Ukrainian community with approximately 1,000 people communicating with each other through Facebook groups, and some crisis care is already provided maybe for let's say several dozens of children with their parents, so maybe up to 100 parents in recent 3 weeks. So there are several groups of psychologists which in turn work with these children. So the next problem which is evolving here with refugees is a big problem with psychiatric care for adults. And Ukrainian people with chronic psychiatric disorders are not much able to get to consultations to Czech specialists due to the language barrier and due to capacity barriers. And that's why one of the problems which is trying to be solved by Czech government and by public institutions is including Ukrainian specialists into the system of care of Ukrainian refugees. And Ukrainian doctors, Ukrainian psychologists are accepted, are welcomed to this system. And like some laws and some rules are accepted or they are made to simplify the process of inclusion of Ukrainian specialists to the system of Czech public care and Czech psychological care in order to help Ukrainian doctors and Ukrainian psychologists to be integrated in this care. So we have really much less extent of problems in comparison is what is going on in Ukraine, and we are trying to provide the best care we can here, but the problem is existing with supplying medical care, psychological, psychiatric care to Ukrainians, though we need to say that the Czech government is doing very big steps in exception of all the laws, all the regulations, and providing patients or Ukrainian refugees with free medical insurance, making all of the medical care available at the same level as Czech citizens have. And this is very big and very positive steps, and certainly Ukrainians are much grateful to Czech Republic for accepting these steps. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Tsyapets. I have a couple of questions. You were talking about providing psychological help, psychiatric medication. Do you work with families and group therapy separately, or how do you focus? How do you organize them?
So usually these are mothers with one or several children. And in our city, we organized a group under the guidance of a coordinator of psychological help who is in charge of a regional crisis center for the help of Ukrainian refugees. And while accepting Ukrainian refugees while providing visa, the last point which was assessed by these refugees was a point of psychological care or psychophysiological care. And those people who did show some symptoms of psychological severe distress or PTSD, so they were registered by certainly voluntary, and they were proposed to join these groups of psychological support. And now we have secretary who calls those mothers and mothers who are in charge of children, and she organizes those meetings like several times per week. So that's why we are providing care for mothers and children. And after the end of these meetings, like meetings last for like approximately 1.5 hours. And after the end of meetings, we provide individual consultations for those who need it.
Okay, my second question is, do you need any psychotropic medication? Because I have contacts, and basically if you need them, I'm sure that we could arrange to send them. That's one question. The second question, would you be interested in receiving professionals from United States or from other parts of Europe to help you, or do you have enough personnel? I'm talking about professionals that speak Ukrainian.
Really, it would be great to have more access. And right now, what is going on that we are trying to get to understand what is going on with the access to individual help online, and if we have some database of Ukrainians who here are in need of this psychological care, so we will provide them some online contacts with Ukrainian crisis psychologists. And I'm not sure what is the capacity of Ukrainian crisis psychologists. I'm very grateful that I was able to participate the RTN protocol training for treatment of PTSD disorders, which was kindly provided by the RTN Foundation. And like I will be able to provide only some care to some people with my capacities, but certainly we will see, or we see now that there are much more need for correction of PTSD. And the question is about the capacity. So I'm not sure how can I answer you. Maybe yes, maybe no. I still don't need. And what's related to psychotropic medication, the system of provision of psychotropic medication in Ukraine and Czech Republic is totally different. If in Ukraine, person can buy many different kinds of medications, even psychotropic, without prescription, in Czech Republic, only psychiatrists can prescribe these medications. So that's why one of the first problems that we have got to is really availability of medications, psychotropic medications to Ukrainian people. But currently, those patients start to be registered with Czech psychiatric institutions, and they start to get these medications at least. So it is not a kind of a problem with psychiatric medications. I don't think that there's a need in medications, because there's sufficient amount of medications in drugstore, available here to buy.
In your system.
Yeah, in our system for prescription. But the question is just for medical help. And this is the question which is trying to be solved on the level of the Ministry of Healthcare, in order to provide those people with the specific healthcare, like psychiatric healthcare.
Okay, I have been dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder since the Vietnam War and since Chernobyl. So I know the problems involved. So that's one area. Since we are at the present time providing a lot of, I have been online with my patients throughout the world for a long time. So, but if you need any professionals that speak Ukrainian online, please send me a note. I think you have my email, and I will arrange to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will be grateful for this.
Thank you. And Dr. Didkovska, let me get back to you, because I wanted to ask you, are there any current cases that you would like to mention to so that there be a greater awareness of the extent of the need that you have specifically?
Thank you so much, dear Dr. Christina Dubrak. We are, of course, do everything what we can do, but what is maybe will be very useful, it is simply the cooperation for our professional support with the specialists who are very experienced in the same topic. Because, you know, we have our, of course, unfortunately, it's our first experience, but thanks God, it's our first experience. We know a lot of theoretically, but why now it is quite useful and quite important to cope with the specialists who have this experience in their previous responsibilities and duties, you know, in psychotherapeutic assessment, in support, psychological support, and so on, so on. And it will be our real or indeed needs, which we can now cope with our own selves. Then if there is some experienced specialists or very useful theoretical knowledge, maybe it will be our useful and our real support from any professionals who can cooperate with our needs.
Thank you, Dr. Didkovska. I know that we have tried, at least myself and my colleagues have tried to send some psychotropical medication, but we send it through Poland. We send it through Krakow.
Okay.
They are delivered to Krakow, and from Krakow they are delivered by Lvivsky Wycery. That's the organization to various
because
centers.
we are in Lviv. Thank you so much. Because we are in Lviv, and if it is possible, of course, we can contact with them.
Thank you very much. I needed to clarify that to see whether there's any way that I can help. Ms. Krystyna Hałyszczak.
So I would like to say some words about children and war in Ukraine, yes, and for the consequences for children's mental health. What I would like to start with is some numbers, yes. As of the morning of April 13th, 2022, more than 540 children were injured in Ukraine as a result of the armed aggression of Russian Federation. At the same time, 191 of them died and 349 received injuries of varying severity. About 4.8 million Ukrainian children have left their homes. Some of them became internally displaced, and part of them had to leave the country. And more than 121,000 Ukrainian children, mostly from Mariupol, were deported to Russia by Russian militaries. Another point is that a lot of children cannot go to schools right now or study at schools in any other way, because a lot of schools were damaged or destroyed. Also, many schools in western part of Ukraine are being shelters for internally displaced persons. So children can only study online. Thus, it has affected more than 5 million students. A lot of Ukrainian children are still experiencing the devastating consequences of living in a war zone. Yes, we talked that many of them had to leave homes, but many still are staying, and they're simply surviving in areas of humanitarian disaster, like Mariupol and other cities. Children simply don't have water or food. They're being the constant threat of shelling and shooting and losing loved ones. And it's horrible. The mental health impact of this is likely to have consequences for years to come, yes, and the most common of them are PTSD and depression, and also a number of unspecific symptoms as well. Yes, PTSD risk increases by repeated or prolonged trauma. If we are talking about children who are affecting a war during a long time, and those symptoms can vary. It can be intense fear, helplessness, anger, sadness, horror or denial. Also physical symptoms like headaches and stomach aches, different emotional reactions and problems with sleeping. And children who experience repeated trauma may also develop some kind of emotional numbing, yes, dissociation. If we are talking about depression, it can occur in children as young as 3 years old, and can look like sadness or hopeless, or showing disinterest to things that children used to enjoy. These also sleeping patterns can change and can occur self-harm behavior. And I have a friend in Kherson, and her son started to bite his lips because he is very afraid of things that are going on in his city. Another effects of trauma can be connected with negative outcomes in social relationships, school performance, general life satisfaction, behavior problems, anxiety long into adulthood. And if we are talking about adolescence, it can be also substance abuse. The longer war go on, the worse it is for children. Another thing that affects small children is that they sometimes, when they have to leave their homes, they also have to leave their attachment objects there. And the things that should bring them some safety, feel of safety, is not with them. Yeah. Studies have shown that there is considerable evidence for a dose-response relation between the number of stressors experienced by children and their mental health outcomes. Yes, and for Ukrainian children, it is the first thing is that they are witnessing or experience violence. Some children are leaving their homes, their countries, yes, and this journey is also a stressor for them. And another thing is that in new country they will have to integrate into social life, and it is one more stressful thing in their life. The role of family and caregivers is big, but there are some buts. It would be good when a family can give their children a lot of love and attention, but it is not always possible when you live in a country which has war. Because a lot of parents are stressed themselves, they have depression, or they're anxious or preoccupied with protecting and finding subsistences for the family, and cannot be fully available. And according to the longitudinal studies, parenting practices seems to play a crucial role for children's psychological well-being in a war context, both as a risk and a protective factor. I will explain what I mean. It can be a risk when a family is not a safe place, when children have violence in their families. Yes, it can deepen, make their emotional, it can affect not in a negative way. Consequently, adequate health care programs for war traumatized communities require both individual and family level approaches. Here are the references, and that is all I wanted to say today. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christina. You mentioned that there is the problem with children. I'm aware of it because I talk with a lot of people, and actually I have some patients whose parents were my patients with post-traumatic stress disorder. But basically, I wanted to ask you about, would it be helpful to have some shipment of teddy bears or children's toys to replace whatever they lost? Is that something? Because we have enough contacts and we could probably send a shipment. We would just need to know exactly where to send the shipments, because I do not want anything to disappear.
I understand you.
What I'm saying.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll thank you for your proposal, and if I hear something that somebody needs it, I'm going to tell Larysa.
Well, maybe you will be able to discuss it with Dr. Didkovska,
yes,
and you could organize something.
Of course.
You can send me a request letter, and I will take care of it from the moment that I get the request letter. First of all, let me thank all of you, all three of you, for wonderful presentations. They were very, very illuminating, and hopefully a lot of people will be able to respond to them. I read very early this morning the Mariupol was completely taken over by the Russians, and a lot of the Ukrainian soldiers died. So my deepest condolence. I feel very sad about it myself. Anyway, I would like to turn it over now to our host and member of our team, Serhiy Tsyapets, who will be asking the questions that we have been receiving so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Durbach. I echo what you said. Thank you to our speakers. Such a relevant topic. Mental health is so important, especially during war and times like this. So our first question from the audience is for Larysa. After the Russian attack on Ukraine, many people began to hear phantom sirens. Is it possible to get rid of those sounds, and how?
Of course, yeah, it's true. It is one of very great problem as for me, but we can do it with maybe two ways of coping. Yeah, one way it is everything what we can see right now. It is psychological helpness, it is psychotherapeutic helpness, it is simply we can see now. Maybe I will spend some time a lot, but we can see two ways. Yeah, for one category of people, this problem of the war or loss of their safety and so on and so on, react in mobilizing way, you know, they very, very quickly became to be more progressive in their achievement and in their possibilities. But for the other category, it is regress. You know, first way, it is progress, and we can mobilize all our resources, all our possibilities to cope with this dangerous situation. But for other, it is regress. And to these two category of people, we can have two ways of solving the problem. Yeah. The first one, they have their own resources and their own autonomy possibility for cope. But for the second way, we can to help them. We can to protect. And of course, first of all, it can be psychotherapists, psychologists, and doctors, even doctors. And we organize some maybe trainings to teach them how to learn them, how to cope with these voices, even for this new experience in their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. So how do you think people can deal with emptiness, anxiety, and grief after seeing and experiencing the horrors that are happening in the attacked cities in Ukraine?
First of all, we have these safety places. You know, safety places, it is the most important information. It isn't only the place inside of us. It is simply the place near our houses, parking sometimes, any other places where you can feel you more protectively. And it was the first important information which we share with our citizens, with our clients, with all the other people, to find this safety place as more as possible, and not far as possible, of course, and to have some medicine, to have some other support persons, even neighbors, of course, first of all, your family, and so on, and medicine if it is necessary, because some of our people have mental disorders even before the war. Yeah, and the war gives this opportunity to progressive, and have the highest level of symptoms.
Thank
Then
you.
it is medicine, but in other opportunity, it is simply professional, very huge quantity of professional helpful, which is training centers, consultation centers, online service, and so on.
It's very helpful. Thank you so much. So our next question, maybe one of our other speakers, if you'd like to respond as well, is how can symptoms of existing mental illness change during the war?
Maybe I will answer right. Today we were talking with one social worker who is in charge of a Ukrainian refugee who has got diagnosis of mental disease in Ukraine, and it was rather compensated. And after she moved to Czech Republic, she started to deteriorate, and it is kind of, we do not know the real diagnosis, but it's like paranoid schizophrenia, and she is not letting her son to attend school. She is not letting her daughter to go out of the house because she is scared of what might happen. And really, this exacerbation is just one of the examples. And what do we expect to see is the overload of mental care here in Czech Republic with Ukrainian stress exacerbated mental disorders, especially if those people would not get medical care in time. Certainly. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. The next question here is, when should people go to therapy for dealing with PTSD? Do you think they should go to therapy before experiencing evident symptoms or after? Maybe we could get opinions from each of the speakers.
Yes. As for me, of course, I want with the symptoms after, because, you know, it's post-traumatic stress disorders. Yeah, and now this period of trauma or the process of traumatizing doesn't end. It is continuing right now, and because of that, all these clients or even all our Ukrainian people are in this traumatizing process, which started 1.5 months before and continuing now. And of course, we understand that even now we have the persons who are in safety place, such as refugees, or such as another people, and they are start to suffering from this PTSD because the period of traumatizing ended for them. But all the other people who is here in Ukrainian land, who is here under bomb, under all the other absolutely unsafety influenced, of course, they will go to the specialist in 1 month, for example, in 3 months, maybe after the war will end. Thank you for the question.
Maybe I will add some ideas to this, like working with refugees. We can use different methods. If we would go to really diagnosis of PTSD, it's as far as I know, it's put after 3 months from the event, and before that it is post-traumatic disorder, maybe, or stress, not disorder, but post-traumatic stress. And for example, the protocol that we work with is ASSIST protocol. According to some research, it is efficient in order to make prophylaxis of PTSD, and it is done in the nearest 1-2 months after the event. And for example, this RTM protocol, this reconsolidation of traumatic memory protocol, is recommended to be done after 1 month. So depending from the method, we can use different ways to help people to make prophylaxis of PTSD or to manage PTSD. And maybe from this point of view, we will need guidance of more experienced specialists, how to work in most efficient ways to manage health with patients with PTSD. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina, would you like to add anything?
I would like to add only one thing, that not everybody will have PTSD. It's only a small % of people who will have this disorder. The rest will cope and manage themselves. And it's optimistic for me.
So as far as I know, it's around 20%, 20 to 25% in work conditions would have it. But again, out of millions of people who were in these conditions, it's a very big amount of people.
Next question, I think, would make sense for Larysa to respond to. How do you teach people to calm down on their own and not panic?
Breathe deeply.
Yes, of course. I am a professor at the university, and thank you, Christina. It's true. Breathe deeply. It's only one way, of course, but it isn't the only one way. Yeah, it's very important. But we try to use any opportunities which have our psychic. Any opportunities. Of course, we are learn them to be very, very carefully to the signal of their body, because first of all, we know that panic attack is our body. It's not our decision. It's not our analysis and synthesis process, not our cognition process. Yeah. And we try from this very, very deep state of our hypothalamus and all the other limbic system, to add to this reaction, very reflection reactions, our cognition resources. And it is one way to contact with the reality. You can see around you, you can see what is in front of you, you can hear what are you hear, what you can hear. Of course, breathe deeply. It's nice recommendation. And all these recommendations, it's simply the way to the contact with reality. Because, when we are in this panic attack, we have our focus perception, which is target only one place, the place of our unsafety, the place of our dangers. And when we open the more wide perception, you can see that it isn't only the danger. There is a lot of other resources which you can use. And we are teaching the people, we are learning the people to use these other resources of your body, resources of your surrounding, resources of your any people, other people, of course, and specialist first of all, because there is a lot of any opportunities. It's not only one way. But this deep breath, it's one of them. It's true. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question for Dr. Tsyapets. How important is it to visit psychologists after the war and potentially take medication if needed to return to the previous mental state?
I think it's really individual, and we cannot say that everybody does need it or no, nobody needs. So really, it's a kind of susceptibility to stress, susceptibility to some events. It depends from the organism psychic, and certainly it depends from the events. And really, alas, when I watch some news from Ukraine, if it is not Larysa Didkovska, and after 15 years of study of psychotherapy and practicing psychotherapy, I would be totally devastated. So really, it's kind of resilience, and the higher is resilience, the lower would be the need in care. But knowing this, every statistics about 20% having PTSD, we suppose that million people would have it. And it's really something of unbearable to have this PTSD and to live within this stress. Certainly, hopefully, it will not be like 20%. Hopefully, it will be much less. But what do we really see here, that out of approximately 5,000 of refugees registered here, for now, the need of psychological help was like, how to say it, like people in need who really required and who wanted this help was maybe less than 1%. We will see what happened later on. But out of those people who are here in my city, it's maybe less than 1%. We will see what will be going on later. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the insight. Christina, question more specific to children. How can we prevent the children who are witnessing these unbearable catastrophes or enduring the war at a young age? How can we prevent them from experiencing PTSD when they're older?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my presentation, the big role has family. Yes, if it is family that gives resource to this child. Yes, parents can talk to children about war, can ask what children are feeling, what are they afraid of, and tell them that it's okay to have these feelings in this situation. And I would say that it is basic, yes. It is my answer.
Thank you. Our last question from the audience is more around, can physical or psychological trauma bring something positive in the future to a war survivor? Do you have any sort of more positive examples from previous patients? Larysa, would you like to respond to this one?
Yeah, and of course, I was started to answer to this question. Yes, that we have two ways, and one of this way, it's more quickly progressive activation of our resource, activation and mobilization, our energy, our even possibilities, and so on. And because of that, this mobilization impact of having traumatic experience, it is a chance to learn very quickly, to learn to cope, to learn to have these coping strategies, which you haven't previously in your life, never. and it's only one maybe positive effect. This new experience of mobilized your personal resource, which you cannot use before. But it isn't very hard price of this experience. You know, it's very expensive price, because sometimes we know that you don't want to have the whole traumatic experience in order to know something about yourself. Better not to have this way of this experience of mobilization or new possibilities or so on and so on. Nothing else. I think that this traumatic experience, it isn't the way which is make your life more happy or better.
Makes a lot of sense.
It's a choice without choice. It's a choice without choice.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like we have time for one last question from the audience that came in. So how can we encourage Ukrainian citizens who are resistant to therapy to accept this help, especially if they need it?
Maybe I will answer to this question, or I will try to answer, because I do not really know what is the best way. It seems to me that the availability of care and free care is really important. To have several options to have this care would be important, because what is going on, like in my city, like my experience says that Ukrainian moms and children are trying to get to different so-called family centers to have some kind of free time activities, and at the same time they are starting to inform psychologists in these centers that they do need this care. And this was the new way of introduction those children and mothers to medical care through local specialists, and these local specialists would contact our Ukrainian psychologists in order to make some kind of way for those children who were really not participating in the medical care. So this wide informing of Czech specialists about Ukrainian specialists who provide this care and wide possibility of care would be probably the best way to help to prevent, first of all, this severe PTSD. Thank you for the question. It is really an important question, how to provide patients with care, especially patients. As I was talking today about the psychiatric patient, as patient who refused to take her medications. What can we do? So we just wait that she would be in her exacerbation, and he would be forcefully taken to medical facility because she would, and we hopefully she will not do any harm for people who are surrounding her. And really, this is a very big problem.
Yes, suicidal ideation is very common, especially when the anxiety is just overboard. Dr. Didkovska, would you like to comment on the question?
No, I'm absolutely agree with Serhiy, and I can add only maybe one sentence. We need this care from the whole world. We need the care of specialists, we need the care of colleagues, we need the care of, for example, and because of that, I want to say thank you very much for our opportunity right now during this 1 hour, demonstrate to the world our needs and our possibilities, our own resources, and very, very thank you for your resources. And
Well,
it was my answer. Thank you, Dr. Durbak.
You're most welcome. We're doing the best that we can, but it's very good that you're bringing that to the awareness of our audience. And Ms. Hawashak?
Yes.
Would you like to have some comments regarding the question?
No, I think Serhiy and Larysa said everything. So I agree with them. We really need care and help from everybody in the world.
Well, thank you very, very much for very informative and illuminating presentations. We have people that have just are in Tijuana, Mexico, and they're sharing with me the problems. One of the big particular problems is that everything is written in Russia, and you really, I told them they need to put in Ukrainians on the board, because basically you do not know how many of those Russians there are just trying to use this opportunity to get into America. So that's known for the for the general population. But we are also trying to expand our aid to the soldiers, particularly our organization, and medical needs that can be resolved. And I will definitely add to the list toys and other things that could be given to children as a substitute for the teddy bear or the doll that I have. I have contacts in that. So again, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you joining us. And I also like to mention that next week we have Claire Menozzi, who is a population affair officer at the population division of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the UN. She'll be talking about the issue of overpopulation. Definitely is not a problem in Ukraine for sure, and never has been. And I wish you a peaceful and as possible week as you can have. So goodbye. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Goodbye.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Bye.